what challenges do activists face today?
Yeah, I have to say, I probably drink more than I used to before 2016. I mean, I can really look at a demarcation line and go, it wasn't great, but it wasn't this challenging.
Mhm.
And I think that part of it is, and Jason, you touched on this with conflict. I mean, people get into conflict when they're afraid they're going to lose something. And I think we are in a position in the United States in particular where we are at a sort of tipping point of how is society going to evolve over the next 50, 100 years? Are we going to go back to quote unquote traditional values, or are we going to move forward to being a more democratic, inclusive society? And people will fight tooth and nail to protect the old values because they feel safe and comfortable, and they don't know what something new might look like. And I think that that is a lot of what we're encountering right now, is people feeling like, I just want to take care of myself and my family, and I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm going to just retreat into what felt safe, even when the truth is, it was never that safe, right? It was never particularly safe. Even in the, halcyon days of the post-war, people were still struggling, and, women were home and miserable, and the incidence of depression was really high. I mean, it wasn't the fantasy that Donna Reed had people believing it was. So I think we have to directly engage the things we're afraid of and look at whether that fear makes sense or whether it's just a sort of knee-jerk reaction that we are having to change.
Yeah, it seems like white men had it really good.
I think white men had it pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, I think it was pretty sweet for you guys.
Yeah.
And someone once said, no man who is sane or sober ever gave up power willingly.
Yeah.
And, that's, you have to be an extraordinary person to say, I have this and I'm going to share, because our understanding of sharing is that you have less.
Mm.
And that's not necessarily true. I mean, we're not talking about a cherry pie here where, you take out half of it and you have less pie. But on the other hand, you have all these other happy people who got their piece of the pie, who are not then looking to get into a fight with you about something or another. You may have to give up one thing, but what are you getting in exchange for that thing you're giving up? If you're giving up a little bit of your power and what you're getting is a world where there's more peace, so you don't actually need that power, that's an excellent trade-off. And I don't think we think about it that way.
Yeah, I think it drives me crazy with the narrative on crime and all of these things. And it's like, well, if we had a safe and equitable society and people were taken care of, then we wouldn't have all of these things because people would be taken care of. And so to me, if you're wealthier or you're in a place of privilege, the reward of sharing some of that is like, oh, well, now I can walk down the street safely because my neighbors are housed and my neighbors have money to put food on the table. And so...
And it doesn't even seem like that hard a concept to grasp, but apparently it is more challenging than I realize it should be, because the reason you don't have high crime in wealthier neighborhoods is because people have what they need.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's the reason. Yeah. Mm-hmm. When people don't have what they need or don't perceive that they have what they need, then crime happens. So if you want less crime, make sure everyone gets taken care of.
Yeah, well, and to do that, you'd have to get the people that have way more to agree to give a little back. And you know, I think when you get too much money or too much power, I think it's like a psychological like dementia or something, because if you have billions of dollars, you honestly don't need that. It's
If you can't spend the money you have in your lifetime,
yeah.
there's nothing to even have a conversation around then.
Do you ever question though, like if you suddenly were a billionaire and gave it a year, do you think you'd get that dementia or whatever, that delusion of like, oh, I gotta protect it, or do you think you'd keep yourself the way you are now?
I think I would keep myself, because the voice of my parents and my grandparents would be in my head so loudly that I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I turned into a jackass.
Yes.
So yeah,
that's right.
and also I actually have a really strong sense of the concept of enough. And I think that that's something that we don't have a good grip on in this country. We don't have a good grip on what's enough.
Yeah.
You know, there are things I would certainly like if you said, I'm going to send you on an all expenses trip to the south of France for 2 weeks. I would not say no, but I don't need that. It would be nice, but I have enough. And I think when we have the understanding of enough, we engage in the world really differently, because then we start looking at, well, who doesn't have enough? I do. Who doesn't have enough? And what can I do about that? And I think that that's something that's going back to the empathy thing, is paying attention to that.
Yeah. What makes the owners of Walmart not care that all their employees could be making more money and they wouldn't even notice the difference in profit? What is that? How do you sleep at night? I'm not trying to insult them. I'm trying to ask the question.
No,
How?
it's legitimately a question. If you are working a full-time job and you can't support yourself, that's not okay.
Yeah.
That's just not acceptable. Yeah, and it perpetuates the cycle of poverty from one generation to another, because you can't get out of the cycle without extraordinarily helpful people and a lot of luck. And why should anyone have to count on that to be able to pull themselves out of poverty? But that is the way it's structured.
Generational poverty instead of generational wealth.
Yeah, I read something recently for an interview I'm doing for my podcast on how women and girls are trapped in poverty in this country. And the example that the writers gave was that this woman living in the Denver area was making something like $35,000 a year, maybe. I'm probably actually overstating what she was making, but to live in Denver, just a basic existence costs almost $90,000 a year.
Oh.
So how do you navigate that?
Yeah. How do you move? I mean, you can't even afford to move.
You can't even move. Nope.
That's very real in Los Angeles, where I am, and even and specifically in my neighborhood in West Hollywood. And so I go to city council meetings, and we'll talk, and all they want to do is fund the police more, because they're like, there's more crime. And we're like, but what if we house people? What if we work on how expensive the rent is, and
give dignity,
what people are making? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so I'll go and speak and say, like, but what if we take care of people instead of bloating this budget that we know is not actually going to help anyone? It's just going to protect wealth and property. And you say that to, like I said, and it just sort of, some of them get it, some of them don't, but they don't do anything.
The thing that I find so interesting in that whole conversation, Rena, is that people forget that the police are mostly reactive, right?
Yes.
They get called after something has gone wrong for the most part. How is that helpful? They're not preventing crime. They're responding to
Mhm.
crime. How about getting to the root and eliminating the need for crime? That
great
seems
point.
so much more logical to
Yes.
me.
That makes so much sense. You're
That's
so right.
that's basically what I said to them in front of the council. And yeah, and they still just make these decisions because there's no way they're gonna get to the root of it. I was like, let's think about what are the root causes? Why do people feel unsafe? Why is crime happening? Where is it happening? And how can we attack it that way and take care of those things and make sure that needs are met? And to me, it is such a simple concept that seems very complex to people.
And I think that what you also are up against in that conversation is this basic and kind of uniquely American again thing of, well, people should pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. And
I don't have any bootstraps.
exactly. No boots, no straps. What do you want me to do here? Right.
Yeah.
And this is not the case in other Western countries where they have social safety nets that prevent people from getting into the situation that so many Americans find themselves in. And, but we blame people for their bad circumstances, but how can you honestly blame someone, a single mother who's working 2 jobs to try and support herself and her kids? How can you blame her and say that she's lazy? She's not lazy. She's working 2 jobs plus the job of taking care of her kids.
Can't even imagine.
So we value a certain kind of labor. We value a certain kind of appearance of labor. And we devalue other kinds of labor enormously.
Yep.
And we have to, this is the fight. Is to put on a level playing field people's jobs. I'm not saying if you are running a huge corporation that you don't deserve to make a good living. That's fine. But you don't deserve to be making hundreds of times what your employees are making. You just don't.
It makes no sense to society for you to be doing that.
No.